Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of the PogChamps 3 tournament. This is the second to last PogChamps 3 match ever. Michelle, Khare versus Neeko, the Consolation finals match. And I honestly could see either of these players taking this match. We've seen great chess from both of them, and we've seen some great blunders from both of them. So let's just see how this game went. Neeko has the white pieces. She starts with knight to c3. We've seen Neeko play a lot of openings, but this game she goes for Alekhine's defense. We have knight to f6 from Michelle and e4 from Neeko, e6, knight to f3, d5, d3, and we've transposed into a French. We have bishop d6 now from Michelle, and this is a huge blunder because here as Neeko you can play e5, and this is a pawn fork on the bishop and the knight, so got to be careful about where you develop those pieces. But Neeko doesn't see this. Instead, we have g3 from Neeko, just looking to develop this light squared bishop. And this e5 tactic will be available for the next couple moves. Knight c6 here, defending this e5 square is the move you got to play here as Michelle. But we have castles. Will Neeko see the e5 tactic now? No, she doesn't. She continues with her plan of bishop g2. And once again, Neeko is a speed demon. She plays pretty much instantly. Her move average, the average time she spends per move is very low, much lower than any other PogChamps competitor. So keep note of that during this match. We have c5 from Michelle. Once again, you had to play knight c6 here to defend against the e5 threat. But Neeko now doesn't go for this e5 move. Instead, she plays e takes d5, and now the opportunity is gone. We have e takes d5 and castles from Neeko, getting her king out of the center. Very good from her. We have d4 now hitting that knight, and knight to e4. Neeko saves her knight. And here we have knight takes e4 from Michelle. D takes e4, and this pawn could be a target later. So I think this trade is definitely good for black. We have rook to e8 from Michelle, now pressuring that pawn, and rook to e1 from Neeko. Neeko defends. Knight d7, continuing development, and c3 from Neeko. Knight to e5 now, and here Neeko trades. Knight takes e5, but here Neeko could have actually won a pawn with c takes d4, and after c takes d4, queen takes d4. So this pawn was hanging. This black pawn on d4 was hanging. White could have taken it. But we instead have knight takes e5. And after rook takes e5 and bishop to f4, once again, white had this c takes d4 option. So better would have been to take with the bishop here, defending the d4 pawn with your bishop and with your queen. But we have rook takes e5 instead. And now bishop to f4 from Neeko. Once again, that c takes d4 move would have been better. But this is a developing move. It hits the rook, so it's fine as well. We have rook to e6 now from Michelle, and e5 from Neeko. Bishop c7, saving her bishop. And now we have this c takes d4. But now that the bishop has moved, this pawn is sufficiently defended. C takes d4, and now bishop to f1. Not exactly sure what Neeko is planning with this, but we may see this bishop routed to c4. I think that might be her plan here. We have queen d5 from Michelle, and now rook to c1 from Neeko, getting that rook on this open file and also hitting this bishop, so Michelle better defend this c7 bishop. She does, and she plays queen d7, but now this allows bishop to h3, and this is a skewer on the rook and the queen. So better here would have simply been you can't actually take this e5 pawn. If you try to take this, now there is bishop c4, and there's a skewer this way on the queen and the rook. And you'll even lose this bishop afterward. So it's just going to be very terrible for black here. Here you have to play a move like bishop to b6 as black. So that definitely would have been much better than queen to d7. But Neeko does not see this bishop h3 move. We have a3 instead, and now b6 from Michelle. b4 from Neeko, and now bishop b7 from Michelle. So I think her plan is she wants to attack and maybe checkmate on this diagonal on the g2 or h1 squares. We have f3 from Neeko, stopping that plan, but you do weaken your king on this diagonal now, so maybe not the best move, but it at least recognizes that she sees that this diagonal could be weak. But once again, you also weaken this diagonal when you do this. So it's hard. It's hard. Is f3 a good move? I don't know. Probably not objectively, but maybe for Neeko it is. I think that's a good answer. We have a5 from Michelle and b5 from Neeko. But queen d5, now from Michelle, and this hangs the bishop on c7. So will Neeko take it? Rook takes c7 here. You just be up a piece as white. But we don't have this. We have bishop e2 instead, over defending this f-pawn. So obviously taking the bishop would have been better here. But Neeko defends her f-pawn, which makes sense as it was attacked twice and only defended once. So it makes sense from a thought process point of view. We have rook d8 now, and rook to e7 would have been better simply defending this bishop. But we have rook d8 instead, and now bishop c4, skewering this queen and rook. So white will win in an exchange here at least, but still this bishop c4 move was not as strong as this rook takes c7 move. Generally, it's better to be up a full piece than it is to be up an exchange. We do have queen takes f3 now, and now after queen takes f3, bishop takes f3, bishop takes e6, f takes e6, now there are a lot less pieces on the board. You see your rook is on this open file aiming at this bishop. It's really hard to miss. And Neeko does not miss it. She plays rook takes c7, and now white is up a full rook. So will Neeko be able to convert this, or will she blunder this game back to Michelle? Michelle does have this passed d-pawn that could be a threat later in the game. So that's what Michelle has got to hope on. She's got to hope that Neeko somehow messes up and doesn't defend this d-pawn very well. We have d3 now from Michelle. Definitely the right plan from her to try to get back in this game, and rook b7 from Neeko, going after this b6 pawn, but this hangs the rook on b7, the backwards bishop move from Michelle. Will she see it? No, she plays d2, but this isn't actually the worst move because now you're attacking this rook as well and also threatening to promote. So here, after bishop takes d2, if you take the bishop, you're still worse as black, but instead of that, you can simply take the rook, and this will be probably very easily drawn at pretty much all levels because, you know, pawns are all on the same files and there are opposite colored bishops and material is completely even. So, yeah, this is just a draw at many levels of chess, many times. But we don't see this bishop takes b7 move. Instead, Michelle, she sees her pawn was just captured and she takes that bishop. Rook takes d2. And now white is winning again, especially after rook takes b6. Now white creating a passed pawn of their own. We have rook to a2 now from Michelle going after this a pawn, and a pawn trade occurs. The e pawn for the a pawn. Rook takes e6 and rook takes a3. We have rook e8 check now, and king to f7, rook h8 going after this h pawn, and a4. Michelle advances her passed pawn. We have e6 check, and here you got to block the pawn with your king just to put up the most resistance and prevent this pawn from promoting. But instead, Michelle plays king to g6. I think she was focused on defending her h7 pawn, but this just allows the pawn to promote. And after e7, there's no way to stop this pawn. You can't bring your rook to the 8th rank. You can't bring your bishop to this diagonal to defend, nor this diagonal to defend, and the king trying to defend will do nothing. So this pawn will promote on the next move. We have rook to a2 from Michelle, and Neeko makes a queen, e8 equals queen, and this is check. We have king to g5, and now rook takes h7 from Neeko. There's one last trick here as Michelle, and that is rook to g2 check, and if white goes to f1, then white is still completely winning and doing completely fine. But if white goes to h1, now it's checkmate in one after rook takes g3. Discovered check. You can't block the bishop check. You can't capture the bishop, and the rook guards the g1 square. So this would be checkmate. This is black's last chance at a swindle. Will Michelle go for it, and will Neeko fall for it? That is the question. Well, we'll never know if Neeko will fall for it because we have king g4 instead, and Neeko here plays queen to h5, which is checkmate. So Neeko takes the first game from Michelle Khare. Michelle's going to have to come back in the second game to bring us to a tiebreaker and win the consolation bracket. Neeko off to a great start in this finals match, but Michelle will definitely have to bring it back. And just a lot of missed tactics, a lot of hanging pieces, but this is what the consolation bracket is about, or this is what PogChamps is really about in general, but especially the consolation bracket. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or this match, so check out my PogChamps 3 playlist up there and check out the next game of the match on the left side of the screen. Stay awesome. Stay subscribed. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.